I'm Carol Reynolds, and this is Windnotes with Professor Carol. And I am thrilled because I have a chance to talk to one of my favorite people in the world, a conductor and a man that I admire so much, Jerry Junkin with the Dallas Winds, for this February concert that is John Williams. Hello,
Right.
Jerry.
Thank you, Carol. And you're one of my favorite people. So we have a mutual admiration
Wow.
society here. So this is great. I'm looking forward to speaking with you about this concert, which is going to be lots of fun for us.
Well, it's February and everyone thinks it's going to be, the Great American Songbook and all the classic love songs. We have a different kind of love song here because we have music that people love all over the world. Who came up with this concert? Is this your project?
Yes, but you know what? We're one of a lot of groups this year that are celebrating John Williams' 90th birthday, which happens to be 1 week prior, a little bit more than that, but February the 8th is his 90th birthday. So we knew it is 1 week. We have this concert on February 15th. So it's like, well, this is the perfect time to do it. We've got to celebrate this unbelievably wonderful music catalog of John Williams.
And I have heard a little rumor that you have long been a great fan of his music.
Oh yeah, who isn't, right? I mean, from I still remember going to the theater and watching, well, of course, Star Wars, but also Jaws, and some of those early John Williams film scores, Close Encounters of the Third Time, all of the Star Wars movies. There have been there's too many to name, literally too many to name. But there's, in my humble opinion, there have been a lot of wonderful film composers, but none greater than John Williams.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. And I was looking at a list myself, and I kept needing to add more lines, and I hadn't really thought about going back to Gidget Goes to Rome in
Right.
1963.
Right. Or the Heidi television movie from 1968. I mean, there's so many.
Yeah, but then you get into like one after another of what you could arguably say are our greatest American films since the 1950s, at least.
Right.
He didn't miss hardly any of them, did he?
No, and those the great collaborations. First of all, with George Lucas, but certainly with Steven Spielberg, which is continued through Schindler's List, Lincoln. All of these wonderful scores. It's just amazing when you look at the entirety of his output that any one person could do this much and on at always this arguably at highest possible level.
Yes. I won't argue with you on that. And I'm sure you think of this all the time, but you can't help but think of all the young people. Some of whom are not so young anymore, right? Because this is a lot of time this could have
Yes.
who came to an interest in serious music through the music of John Williams.
Yes, there's no doubt about it. And people who heard, the music from the Star Wars movies and were then motivated to listen to Gustav Holst and other composers, Wagner, that Williams was the linkage in a way, brought them into this music world. It's amazing.
Do you think that, I mean, neither of us knows, but do you think in 100 years we'll still be listening to John Williams?
I think we probably will, because the music it's amazing, that as far as cinema goes, clearly, the movies will continue to be viewed, but there is music that he produced for some movies which were not the great blockbuster successes, which the music still lives on. And I think of his scores to Far and Away, which is a good movie, but it didn't achieve the same kind of success as some of the other. But that film score is still performed all the time. The Oliver Stone JFK movie, that's all John Williams music. 1941, which is kind of a silly movie, but yet that's a John Williams film score, and the music continues to live on. Groups all the time play the march from 1941.
Ah, okay, so he's amazing, and this music is going to be around for the foreseeable future. But why is it so good? And why? What is it? And why do you feel like it's got to be on the stage for everybody? Because you can go buy a CD, right?
Sure. And we recorded some of this music, but we have a whole CD of John Williams music, and certainly there have been so many great recordings that have been made of this music. But there's just nothing like experiencing it live. because there's a power to it. And watching the musicians perform is a totally different experience than one can get just listening to playing something off of a streaming site or however one takes in their music these days. And just aurally, having this sound in a hall like the Meyerson, which is built for this kind of music, actually, it's an experience that you just can't get anywhere else, I think. So it's not only the fact that, okay, it's a live performance, we get it, but also his music lends itself to us, to the wind band medium so beautifully, because he's a composer who has always used woodwind, brass, and percussion sort of to the utmost of their capacity. So that's why this music fits what we're doing so well, I think.
Is it hard for the players, these scores?
It's very difficult. It's taxing. As a matter of fact, I just had an email this morning from one of the players just talking about there are a lot of notes, on this show, and just the fact that they're playing all the time. There aren't the rests that you would have if the same instruments were playing this in the orchestra with the strings to carry some of the load. The strings aren't there, so that string music is then incorporated into the winds, and so they're just playing a lot. It is quite taxing, quite demanding.
So if you're playing that music, and it depends on your age, of course, and whether watching these films come out was like one of the big milestones of your life in that period of your youth. But do you think people keep the stories and the score, and when they play the score, I mean, are they seeing Darth Vader? Are they seeing these crazy creatures, or has it become really music at this point?
I think for some of it, it becomes just music. However, I think it's impossible to unlink the images that you have from the Star Wars movies. So when you hear the Imperial March, I can imagine hearing that march if you've ever seen The Empire Strikes Back and not seeing Darth Vader's helmet somehow. I mean, it just conjures up this mental image. Must you have seen the Star Wars movies to enjoy this music? Absolutely not. Because the music does stand alone. But once you've seen the movie, I think it's difficult to get that out of your head. Jaws. If you hear the theme to Jaws, you see Bruce, the mechanical shark, right? I mean, there's just, I think if you've seen the movie, there's no way to take those apart.
Yeah. How does a composer like John Williams work? I mean, I know there's lots of ways, but and when you conduct, do you think ever in terms of the sort of micro elements that he had to consider, measure by measure, film unit by film unit?
Yeah, I mean he is a very fastidious composer, of course, but there are composers who do what he does, and they write it at the piano and then they hand it to an orchestrator, and they're on to the next project. John Williams is much more hands-on, I can tell you. I mean, he works with an orchestrator or orchestrators. However, he's making little bubbles in the score that this should be oboe, this should be solo flute, this should, whatever. And I know that because I've seen some of the scores produced to these arrangements that we're playing from his publisher with notes that John Williams has written in with a bubble and like a circle, and move this to trumpet 2, move this to alto saxophone solo, things like that, where and it would be easy. These are arrangements that have been produced long after the original material. So, but he's still thinking about it and still wants it to be released in a way that is clearly the way that he wants it performed. So this is something that it's not just, okay, well, I'm on to the next project with him, but he's very serious about all of this.
If someone's done what he's done and reached this many people, there's a legacy. Do you sometimes think about what his music has done for the ones who've come after him, the ones who aren't yet 90? I mean,
Oh
how
yeah.
has he changed film scoring?
Oh, and I've spoken with not only composers who write film music, but also composers who write video game music. They, to a person, all put John Williams on this pedestal. That he is a person who influenced their way of thinking, their way of orchestrating, their usage of sound. So there was a, if it were not for John Williams, there's much more film music I think that we would be hearing that would be produced on synthesizers and things like that. But I think John Williams' penchant and his love of the large sort of vastness that can be created with a big symphony orchestra with big woodwind and brass and percussion sections, that has so colored his way of thinking about film music. And let's face it, people ask him to write these scores because they have that sound in their ears also. And so they want to somehow bring that concept to their film. So, yeah, there's no question about the fact that he has influenced every generation, which is now, what, 3 or 4 generations of film composers after he started. And his first start, was as a jazz pianist. He was a pianist who played in the United States Air Force Band. So his association with bands goes way back.
Oh, that's glorious. So he's sort of saving music in a way, saving American non-electronic, non-synthesized music. I mean, he might go down as one of his accomplishments when the future looks back.
I look at it that way. I think that there's no question about the fact that he has continued to sort of ramp up the game as far as film scores, and so much of this music, his not only his repertoire but music of other composers of his and succeeding generations. Those pieces get performed on the stage as well.
Okay, so he brought it all to the stage in a way.
Yeah.
That's that's wondrous. Now you picked this program, and it's a lot of Star Wars because how could there not be, right? Which
Right.
I've again also heard that you are a particular fan of the whole Star Wars. Did I get that
Sure.
right? And
Yes, absolutely. I
that
can remember. I can remember seeing the original Star Wars, but seeing. I can remember where we were sitting in the Michigan Theater in Ann Arbor when The Empire Strikes Back. And people who are elderly like me, who saw those movies in the theater when they were first released, the excitement of back in those days, the 20th Century Fox fanfare theme, and then always just this slight delay. And then the big opening credits would have it with the scrolling, story that would tell, sort of give you the backstory of what was happening. We could all of us who saw that can picture that just like it was yesterday when we hear that music.
and that was kind of a first. He had to fight to
Yes.
get the right to do that, to make it front and center story and music, right?
Yes.
Not any of the other distractions that would have been normal in setting up a film. That was revolutionary, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And that was where he and George Lucas really were a fantastic team. And he said I've seen interviews where he said, it's hard to get information from George Lucas. He wouldn't tell you a lot about what was going on in the movie. He would give you just enough information. But then after that, it was a great collaboration because he was in a way given free rein to come up with these themes, which the fancy operatic term is leitmotif, but that exists in all of these Star Wars movies, just like it does in a Wagner opera.
Yeah, the signature themes is sometimes they
Princess
call it that.
Leia's theme, Yoda's theme, all of course, the Darth Vader's theme, etc.
Princess Leia, we don't want to, and
Right.
everything out. I bet, I don't know if anyone's done this, but if you take these movies and you turn down the sound, and of course the technology was amazing at the time, but
Yes.
still, I'm not sure if a young person today would see how amazing, but you take the sound out, it's not the same film at
Oh,
all.
yes, no way. And there's a great story, and I'll probably tell it in a little more length about Princess Leia's theme,
Oh,
which is it's so beautiful. Um, Sorry about my phone ringing here in the background.
maybe it's a ringtone, maybe it's a theme, a new theme.
Right. But Princess Leia's theme, it was one of those instances where George Lucas didn't give him a whole lot of information. It just said, we need, something nice, it's gonna, for Princess Leia. Well, and so he had seen, some of the dailies, and so he was following the story, and he just imagined, because this is the initial Star Wars movie, that Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker were going to be lovers. So he wrote this big love theme for Princess Leia. knowing that in a later movie it was going to be revealed that they're actually siblings.
Right, right, right.
So he had to come up with another theme later on for Princess Leia, to replace the original Princess Leia's theme. But it's beautiful, beautiful music.
It is beautiful, and it sets up all that, intrigue, romantic
Yes.
intrigue that the okay, so even though this concert's got a lot of Star Wars and other pieces, and of course I'm just looking to make sure I've got this right that with ET, which to me is just one of those,
Yes.
important things in my own life. I don't know how you get more beautiful than that. And a number of other pieces, including things, I mean, Scherzo for Motorcycle, what is that?
Right. That's from the Indiana Jones movies. I can't keep track of them. It's the one with Sean Connery. And so
Okay.
there's a scene where they are riding together, Indiana Jones and his father, in this tandem motorcycle. And this is the music that accompanies that little chase through the country. Uh, and then a movie that was, to me, surprisingly not a huge box office success was Hook with Robin Williams as Peter Pan. I think it's a great movie. I rewatch that movie every once in a while. But the Flight to Neverland from that, it's just such great music, really evocative, and we'll be performing that. We'll be beginning the concert with the Overture to the Cowboys, which is this great film, which there actually is not an overture to the Cowboys. The overture came later. And I think it was the composer Andre Previn who suggested to John Williams this was the music from the end title, the end credits at the end of the film. And he was so taken with it, he said, you need to make an overture out of all of that music. It's just fantastic. So he did it. He expanded it and turned it into a standalone piece, the Overture to the Cowboys. But this is one piece that we perform, which doesn't exist in this form in the original movie. It's just bits and pieces of the film music. And then, as you mentioned, the from E.T., The Adventures on Earth, which is just glorious, and that is also the end credits from E.T., but also the big flying scene at the end, where the bicycles take off. And, yeah, it's right. It's right. The hair stands up on the back of your neck when you think about it. And then lots of music from Star Wars. That's the second half. Is all Star Wars music, various Star Wars movies. So not only the main title, but I mentioned Yoda's theme, Princess Leia's theme, of course the Imperial March. We have to perform that. Then one that people haven't probably heard. It's from one of the spin-offs called Han, The Adventures of Han. And this is a brand new arrangement. I mean, it's actually one of the newer scores that Williams wrote. But Paul Lavender has just released this. It's actually not released yet. We're playing it pre-release. The Scherzo for X-Wings, the Jedi Steps and finale. So, and then we have a couple of surprises, of course, at the end. But
Oh, I'm sure you do. And there'll be some discussion about all this from the stage too. Is that a fair guess?
we have to, well, if nothing else, to give the players a little bit of a break.
Exactly. Now, can someone come to this concert, you think, dressed in costume with a lightsaber? Will that be okay, do you think?
Of course it would be. Yes. I mean, you hope somebody will. And I hope it's not just one person either. But I understand ticket sales are going well, but there's still time to get your costume together.
Is there time for me to get my hair done up like Princess Leia?
Yes, with the two buns there. Yes,
That's a goal. That's a goal. Extra musical associations. Well,
exactly.
it's going to be a love fest to John Williams. What a wonderful tribute. And there'll be people there young people for whom this is still kind of news. So,
Right.
new generation you're bringing in.
I hope so. That's the idea anyway. So we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be, it's always so special in the Meyerson when we get to perform. But here, I mean, we're actually celebrating. We're celebrating this man's incredible achievement, legacy, career, life. So it's going to be a big party.
Well, celebration is what everyone needs right now. So thank
Yes.
you all and thank all the players. And it's not that many days. So everybody get yourself down there with some kind of galactic, whatever you need to do so you can be part of this party.
Absolutely. And the numbers are heading in the right direction. So it looks like we'll be able to have a really nice crowd. So we're looking forward to the audience.
Yes, well, they're going to be looking forward to you. And thank you, Jerry Junkin, for sharing time with me today. And I wish I knew some great Star Wars line. I mean, I don't think I should say anything about the Force. I don't feel qualified to say that.
Right.
But
Well, always great to spend time with you, Carol, and I'll look forward to seeing you at the concert.
very, very good. And thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye.